Hey guys, sorry I can't be with you today. I'm so grateful that Mr. Beatty is able to be there with you. I'm sure he gave you an update yesterday that my knee is really hurting, and I ended up going to the doctor and they did some tests. It's not broken, but there was a fluid buildup inside of my knee sac, so they tried to remove the fluid and injected some medication. I just have to take it easy for a couple of days so it can heal. They say that I probably can come back to work on Monday. So yesterday with Beatty, you were supposed to create some safety posters. I can't wait to see those when I get back. If you happen to need more time to finish those, take a few minutes before you start today's lesson. If you don't have your science notebook with you at your table, if you'll hit pause on the video, Mr. Beatty, and allow them to go get their notebooks, we're going to need those for the second part. If you don't have your science notebook, there are a few on my back desk. Feel free to take one of those. If you're able to bring one in the next day or so, you can just use some paper to write down the answers to the next question, and then we'll get you caught up in your notebook when I get back on Monday. The real purpose of today's lesson is to figure out and to let you know why we use composition notebooks and what science notebooks looks like. The best way to get you engaged in this is to actually show you a variety of famous scientists and their notebook and their work, and so you can kind of model your notebooks after the works of great scientists in the past. Really weird request. I would like for you to turn your notebook upside down, flip it over. We're going to use the back of your notebook to set up a section for some daily openers. These are questions that we're going to write in your notebook some days that kind of reflect on some concepts and give you an opportunity to brainstorm. So for today, I'd like for you to do this. Create a list of 5 scientists and briefly describe their accomplishments. Think back to elementary school. Think back to movies that you've seen, documentaries that you've watched. And I want you to create a list. When you're finished, you're going to share those out as a class. So Mr. Beatty, go ahead and hit pause on the video. Allow the kids time to write and to share their responses. Hopefully someone in the class mentioned Leonardo da Vinci. Movies based on his life, as well as even inventions that we have, are based on some of his early works. Here you see some sketches from his notebook of his flying machine and other inventions. If you go through his notebooks, you'll also see a lot of anatomy pictures. Da Vinci had this fascination with human form. He even spent some time in the mortuary examining dead bodies and sketching human structures. Did anyone mention Galileo? If you were to look in Galileo's notebook, you're going to see lots of astronomy pictures. For example, the moon phases that are shown here. What about Sir Isaac Newton? Famous for his Newton's laws. We're going to study him this year in the 8th grade, but you can see lots of fascinating things in his notebook. Newton's journals are also archived online. So when I get back, we might take a little bit of time, and once you get your iPads, I'm going to have you go online and look at his notebooks so you can see the work that Newton did. It's archived forever for people to see. How about Charles Darwin? Not sure if many of you mentioned him. He's known more famously for his theory on evolution, how creatures change and evolve over time. If you were to examine his science notebooks, you're going to see tons and tons of sketchings that he did while he was on the Galapagos Islands. Here's just a few where he cataloged shells and birds. Again, most of his research that you're going to read about in 7th grade science is based on his work with finches, the birds pictured on the screen. He was really infatuated with the beak shape and how they evolved in the different species on the island. Here's some more sketches from his notebook, the Galapagos turtles, you can see here. Something I like about the entry on the right is he started his page with "I think." Then he goes on to explain how different organisms are related, kind of like a family tree. So it's kind of nice to know that even scientists that are some of the most famous still start out with these theories or these hypotheses about what's going to happen. They're not sure. They end up testing it for years and years and years. I don't think anybody wrote down Gregor Mendel. This is actually a scientist that we're going to study this year when we do our genetics unit. But something interesting about his notebook. Again, I'm not sure what year this actual entry was completed. It's kind of hard to see the information. He might have the date on there, but it's very difficult to tell. but if you can guess, it was before 1884. I want you to think about and just raise your hand and ask the question or answer the question, how did he add these colors to his sketches? Hint, crayons were invented in 1902 and markers around 1940. So pause the video, have a short discussion about how he could have used red coloring in his entry. Did anyone say berries? That's a pretty logical answer. You might have learned in a social studies class before that you can use different berries and different plants to create color and dye. How about Marie Curie, one of our famous women's chemists? Here's a sketch from her notebook. Lots of drawings and details. So for the next few slides, we're going to be examining one famous scientist's notebook. And I want you to kind of think about the scientists that might have created this entry. So as we look at details and closer things, I want you to notice and kind of think about how we're going to apply that to our own learning. So scientists, well, especially inventors, make sure they record all of their successes as well as failures. If you notice on the entry on the right, when they made a mistake, they simply drew a line through it. That allows you to go back and to examine your mistakes again, and maybe it wasn't a mistake to begin with, you just needed to tweak it. So it's really important you don't erase or cross out completely or blacken out your responses, because it's going to be important for later learning. Here's another entry from the person's notebook. If you notice, the diagrams help examine the ideas that are presented here. The artwork is nowhere near what Da Vinci's artwork was. It's a simple sketch. I think all of you could create a sketch similar to this. It doesn't have to be extremely artistic to help you explain your ideas. The thing I like about this particular entry is it's a very detailed procedure of what happened during the experiment. It's also dated March 9th, 1876. Hopefully you're kind of getting an idea of which scientist this might be. If you also noticed, the page is numbered. This is page 39 in his journal. Here's March 10th, 1876, page 30. The next day, he's still continuing his idea. He's still improving upon his experiment. If you notice again, we have the complete date information. We have another detailed drawing or diagram that goes with his work. We have a detailed written description about his experiment, in this case, his procedure. What did he do? And at the bottom, you can actually notice that he's already suggested things to change and improvements for tomorrow. So when he comes back into the lab tomorrow, he would know what he needed to work on. Last picture. Take a second to examine it. Any ideas on which scientist created these sketches in his notebook? I'll give you a hint. He lived between 1847 and 1922. If you need a further hint, examine the signature at the bottom of the page. Pause and have a discussion about this. Hopefully you figured out that it was Alexander Graham Bell, and this is the work that he did that led to the invention of the telephone. I'm sure someone mentioned Thomas Edison, again famous for his work and inventing a light bulb. And here's Thomas Edison's version of the light bulb, and you can see the drawings in his paper, dated March 8th, 1876. He also initialed his work, TAE, Thomas Alva Edison. Einstein is one of the more recent scientists I'm sure you all mentioned. You've probably heard of his theory of relativity, that E equals mc squared. You can actually examine all of his notebooks online too, and I'll share that link with you later, so if you're interested in reading about his work, you can. Did you mention a more recent scientist? We have a physicist, Stephen Hawking. You might know him. He was born in 1942. It's funny because he actually doesn't have a composition notebook online that I could find, but I did find an archived piece of paper that he wrote on and numbered, page 1, that they actually have behind glass and holding it with special gloves so it doesn't get damaged, because it's that important and that valuable to see this work that he's written out. So what should you include in your notebook? So we're going to set this up officially today. So on the first page of your notebook, I want you to label it Table of Contents. You're going to use the first page, the front and the back side of that first piece of paper, to help keep track and stay organized with what you're putting into your notebook. The second thing I need you to do is go ahead and number your pages. You can put the number anywhere you like on the paper. If you think you're going to write on the backs of the paper, please number the backs. If you're only going to write on the fronts, then only number the fronts. So pause the video, take a few minutes, and number your pages. One thing that's really, really important in science notebooks is it's a place for you to ask questions. Your questions are so important for future learning and for understanding. It allows me to go and kind of see a window into your thinking. It allows you to keep track of your thinking because you have so many things going on. So we're going to use our notebook as a place to ask those questions. We're also going to use our notebooks to record observations. We're going to spend a lot of time next week learning how to make scientific observations and record them in our notebooks. We're going to include our data. We're going to learn how to draw technically. So we're going to make technical drawings to put in our notebook. And we're going to also have some time for reflection. You've already started your first daily opener section. So go ahead and flip your notebook over. Put the title at the very top on the back, Daily Opener, so then you will know you're going to keep adding to this section. So you should already have a list of 5 scientists and their discoveries or inventions. Just draw a line under that so we're ready. I would also include the date next to your session for today. Again, today's date is Friday, August 22nd. Not sure if you appreciate the humor in this slide, but if you watch The Big Bang Theory, you totally understand. I don't know if Sheldon had any notebooks or not, but he always has whiteboards that he can document. Again, it's always important that we give credit for the illustrations that we've borrowed and ideas we've borrowed from online. So here's the works cited. I really hope you had a great day today. And again, I'm sorry that I couldn't be there with you, but I know I entrusted you in great hands with Mr. Beatty. So have a great weekend, and I will see you all on Monday.